You are lying on a wooden table. Four men are holding your arms and legs. A leather strap is between your teeth. The surgeon standing over you is not cruel. He is not careless. He is simply about to cut into your body while you are fully, completely awake, and there is nothing on this earth that can stop you from feeling every second of it. This was surgery, not in some forgotten corner of prehistory. This was surgery in 1840 in the finest hospitals in London, Paris, and Boston, performed by the best trained doctors alive. For almost all of human history, pain was simply the price of being repaired. Think about what that actually means. Every operation, every amputation, every tooth pulled from a jaw, every tumor cut from a neck happened inside a mind that was awake and screaming. Surgeons were not judged on precision. They were judged on speed. The British surgeon Robert Liston, who worked at University College Hospital in London in the 1830s, was famous across Europe for amputating a leg in under 30 seconds. That was not showmanship. That was mercy. Every second he saved was a second you did not have to endure. And here's the part that should stop you cold. The substance that could have ended all of it was already sitting on a shelf. It had been sitting there for over 40 years. And for most of that time, people used it as a party drug. To understand how that happened, you have to go back to a laboratory in Bristol, England, in the year 1800, and a 21-year-old chemist named Humphrey Davy is experimenting on himself. He is inhaling a gas called nitrous oxide, which is exactly the gas your dentist might still give you today. Davy breathes it and he laughs. He feels euphoric. He feels light. And then he notices something else, something no one had thought to write down before. While he is under the gas, a painful abscess in his gum stops hurting. He publishes this. In 1800, in a book called Researches, Chemical and Philosophical, Humphrey Davy writes that because nitrous oxide seems capable of destroying physical pain, it might be usable during surgical operations. That sentence was published, it was printed, it was read, and the medical world did nothing with it for 46 years. Why? Ask yourself what you would have believed. Pain was not seen as a problem to be solved. It was seen as part of the body's truth. Many physicians believed pain was necessary, that it kept the body alert, that a patient who felt nothing might simply slip away and die. Some believed suffering was morally instructive, and behind all of it sat a quieter assumption, the kind that hides so well you never notice it. Surgery hurts. That is what surgery is. You do not question water for being wet. So the gas that could have erased agony became entertainment. Across Britain and America, traveling showmen ran laughing gas demonstrations. Pay a small fee, breathe from a bag, and stagger around a stage while an audience roars. Students held ether frolics, inhaling ether vapor at parties for the giddy, drunken high. Ether, which is a clear, sweet-smelling liquid that evaporates into a powerful vapor, was cheap and easy to make. For decades, it was a joke, a novelty, a carnival trick. The cure for the worst pain human beings had ever known was a punchline. And then, one by one, a handful of men noticed the same strange thing at those parties. People who fell down and bruised themselves badly while high on the gas did not seem to feel it. They looked at their own bleeding shins with genuine confusion. The first man to act on it was a country doctor in Georgia named Crawford Long. On the 30th of March, 1842, in the small town of Jefferson, Long soaked a towel in ether, held it to the face of a patient named James Venable, and cut a tumor out of his neck. Venable felt nothing. Long charged him $2.25, which included the ether. He did not publish. He kept operating quietly, and he kept his discovery in a drawer for 7 years. So the story went to someone else. In December 1844, a dentist named Horace Wells sat in an audience in Hartford, Connecticut, watching a laughing gas show. He saw a man under the gas smash his leg badly against a bench and feel nothing. Wells understood instantly. The next day, he had a colleague give him nitrous oxide and pull one of his own teeth out of his head. He woke up and said he had not felt so much as a pinprick. Wells had it. He had the answer. And then he lost it in the most public way imaginable. In January 1845, he was given a chance to demonstrate his discovery at Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston, in front of a room full of medical students. He gave the gas to a patient, began to pull the tooth, and the patient cried out. Whether Wells removed the gas too early or the patient simply groaned while unconscious, no one can now say for certain. It did not matter. The students jeered. Someone shouted that it was a humbug, a fraud. Horace Wells walked out of that room humiliated, and the medical establishment closed behind him like water. Now watch what happens next, because this is where the story turns dark. Wells had a former partner, a dentist named William Thomas Green Morton. Morton had been in the room. Morton had seen the idea. And Morton went to a chemist named Charles Thomas Jackson, learned about ether, and started testing it on animals, and then on himself, then on his patients. On the 16th of October, 1846, in an operating theater at Massachusetts General Hospital, William Morton walked in carrying a glass inhaler. The patient was a young printer named Gilbert Abbott, who had a tumor on the left side of his jaw and neck. The senior surgeon, John Collins Warren, waited with visible impatience. Picture the room. Wooden benches rising in steep circles. Doctors and students leaning forward, arms folded, ready to laugh again. Morton holds the glass globe to Abbott's face. Abbott breathes. His body loosens. His head falls back. Warren cuts. And Gilbert Abbott does not scream. He does not thrash. He does not fight the men holding him down, because there are no men holding him down. He lies still while a surgeon opens his neck. When it is over, John Collins Warren turns to that silent, staring room and says one sentence that has echoed for nearly 2 centuries. Gentlemen, this is no humbug. That room is still there. It is called the Ether Dome, and you can walk into it today. Within weeks, the news crossed the Atlantic by ship. Within months, surgeons in London and Paris were operating on sleeping patients. In 1847, an obstetrician in Edinburgh named James Young Simpson tried a different chemical, chloroform, and found it faster and easier to use. In 1853, the physician John Snow gave chloroform to Queen Victoria during the birth of her 8th child, Prince Leopold. When the Queen of the British Empire accepted it, the argument was effectively over. In roughly 7 years, humanity ended a form of suffering it had endured for its entire existence. So this should be the happy ending. The men who did it should have been showered with honor and money and peace. Here's what actually happened to them. William Morton refused to reveal what his miracle gas was. He tried to hide it, coloring the ether with dye and perfuming it, and calling it Letheon. And in November 1846, he took out a patent on it. He wanted to own the end of pain. The medical world turned on him for it. He spent the rest of his life fighting Charles Jackson and Horace Wells and Crawford Long in a bitter, grinding war over who deserved the credit. Petitioning Congress for a reward he never received. He died in New York in 1868 at 48, broke and exhausted. Horace Wells never recovered from that room in Boston. He began experimenting on himself with chloroform again and again, and he became addicted to it. In January 1848, in a chloroform haze, he ran into a New York street and threw sulfuric acid at 2 women. He was arrested and locked in the Tombs prison. When the fog lifted and he understood what he had done, he wrote a letter to his wife, and then he took his own life in his cell. He was 33 years old. 12 days later, in Paris, the French Academy of Medicine formally recognized him as the discoverer of anesthesia. The letter announcing it arrived after he was already dead. Charles Jackson, the chemist, spent decades insisting the discovery was his. He ended his life in a mental asylum. Crawford Long, the quiet Georgia doctor, who did it first and told no one, died in 1878, still arguing for a credit that history had already given away. And the discovery itself was not clean either. On the 28th of January, 1848, a 15-year-old girl named Hannah Greener was given chloroform for a simple procedure to remove an infected toenail. She died on the table within minutes. She was the first recorded death from an anesthetic, and she would not be the last. It would take another century of chemistry, dosing, monitoring, and hard-won failure to make going under something close to safe. So what is the twist here? It is not that anesthesia was invented by accident, though it nearly was. It is this. Humanity did not lack the means to end its own worst suffering. It had the means. It had them for almost 50 years, printed in a book, sold at fairgrounds, laughed at in parlors. What humanity lacked was the willingness to believe that the suffering had to end at all. The gas was never the hard part. The idea was. Now come back to your own life. You have almost certainly been under a wisdom tooth, a broken bone set, an appendix, a knee, a birth, a scan you had to stay perfectly still for. Someone put a mask on your face or a needle in your arm and asked you to count backward, and you got to about 7, and then you were somewhere else, and then you were awake, and it was finished, and the worst hours of your life simply never happened to you. You were given something that Napoleon could not buy. Something no king, no emperor, no pharaoh in 5,000 years of human power could purchase at any price. You got it for free, in a room with fluorescent lights, from a stranger who did it 4 times already that morning. And it cost Horace Wells his mind, and William Morton his fortune, and Hannah Greener her life. So the next time a surgeon leans over you and tells you to count backward from 10, understand exactly what is being handed to you. You are lying on a table. Someone is standing over you with a blade, and they are about to open your body, and you are not afraid, and no one is holding you down, and you will not feel a single thing.